What's up, guys? Today I want to make a video talking about my journey at becoming a motorcyclist. I bought my first motorcycle 2 months ago, never ridden before then, not even dirt bikes or anything. I bought this motorcycle right here, was my first motorcycle. I bought this as a Harley, I think it's called an XG 500, something like that. Street 500 is, if you just Google Harley Street 500, that's what this bike is. They only made these for a few years. They actually specifically made them for the Harley Riding Academy. So this bike was literally designed for people new riders to learn to ride on. So that's what this bike is. This is my second bike I bought already. This is a Yamaha MT-07. Technically, this is still a beginner bike, but it's definitely a little more powerful than this one right here. When I say a little more, I mean a lot more. I would say, I haven't ridden too many bikes. I've only ridden these two bikes, but I would definitely say this is pretty up there on a beginner bike. So, but we'll get more into that a little bit later. I kind of want to talk about how I started, what I needed to learn in order to get confidence in riding, and what I did. I didn't have any instructors. I have no paid instructorial. In fact, to this day, I still don't even have a license, which is not smart, especially considering how much I ride already. I did sign up for the MFS course. It was, at the time, they were all sold out, and the earliest one I could get into was almost 2 months away, so I didn't have the patience, and I just went ahead and taught myself. I'll still take the course because I'm sure I can learn something there. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert, but I'm sure I can still learn something. And then, of course, by the end of the MFS course, I'll have my license. So there's multiple reasons why I'll still take the course. Anyways, what I want to talk about today is where I started, and where I am now, and how I got here. So, like I said earlier, I started on this bike. Harley Street 500 cc's. I read online it's got about 30 horsepower-ish and like 20 foot-pounds of torque or something like that. I'm probably wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's close. Needless to say, if you don't know anything about motorcycles or horsepower or torque or anything, that's not very strong. Ninja 300 cc Ninja is as powerful as this bike. It's got the same specs, or not same specs, but it's got comparable torque and horsepower as this 500 cc motorcycle. So this is not a beast by any stretch of the imagination. I do think this is a great beginner bike. I'm not saying it's the best. These two are the only bikes I've ever ridden, so I'm not going to say this is the best, but I do like it because it never, aside from my initial hurdle of just being intimidated by getting on a motorcycle at all, this bike never really intimidated me at all. It was really easy to just get on and start riding. So I really liked this bike. I'm glad this was the first bike that I bought, and I started riding on this. So the first thing I had to do in order to start riding and learning was kind of understand the clutch and just how to get the bike rolling and starting. And personally, I have a lot of experience with riding or driving manual cars, so I already understand the concept of a clutch and gears and stuff like that. I have a lot of experience. I've owned 2 manual cars, and between the 2 of them, I have well over 10 years of experience driving manual cars. So I was pretty confident with the clutch. It's just a little different on a motorcycle, getting the feel about it and everything like that. So literally the first day I bought this bike and the first time I got on it and tried to ride it, all I did was there's a slight downhill on my driveway, just very slight drive downhill. And I put the bike at the very edge of the driveway and oriented the front tire in a way that I wouldn't really need to use the handlebars or lean or anything. I could just roll down my hill and go onto my road and just slightly lean a little bit and then be going down the road. And as I did that, I put it in first gear and slowly let the clutch out. And I didn't give it any gas or anything. I just kind of rolled forward. You can let the clutch out slowly, start to feel it catch, and then once it catches, you just let it out a little bit slower, make sure you're continuing to roll, and since I was going down a very slight downhill, that was all I had to do. I didn't give it any gas. Once it was in gear and I was on the road, then I felt pretty comfortable with just giving it a little bit of gas and riding down the road. And that's what I did. I just coasted down the hill, put it in gear. Once it was in gear, I gave it a little bit of gas and just rode down the road. Came to a stop sign, pulled the clutch in, slightly pressed the brakes, rear and front brake at the same time, slightly pressed it until I came to a stop. Then I put the bike in neutral and hobbled my way around doing a U-turn until I had completely turned around, and then pretty much did the same thing right back down to the road to my house. I wasn't going down a hill, so I kind of had to give it a little bit of gas to get it to go into gear from the start, since I was completely stopped. But that was it. I just literally just kind of rolled into my first going and then kind of gave it a little bit of gas in my second. And it was super simple. And once I had beaten that hurdle, I really wasn't that scared of the bike, of the clutch. I really wasn't scared of the clutch anymore at all. I shifted early. I did a little bit of shifting so that I could feel what it feels like going into second. I think I even went to third. The speed limit on my road is 30, and I don't think I broke 15 in that little stint of trying to figure that out. But I was still just shifting so that I could kind of feel what it felt like to use the clutch going into second. And I think I might have even went into third, only going 30 miles an hour. So that was it. It was super simple, and I was super happy, and I immediately got a huge confidence boost. This bike was great for it too, because I never once felt like, even the first time that I was letting the clutch out and doing all of that, I never once felt like the bike was just going to wheelie up and throw me off the back or take off from underneath me. So it was really confidence inspiring that this bike wasn't too powerful for me. And it's pretty heavy. I think this is like a $500 or a 500-pound bike, so that's heavy for motorcycles. And then it's on the lower scale of power with a heavy frame. It was good. So then the next thing I had to do was take corners. I had to, learn how to, instead of hobbling my way around and just going right back down the road I came, I had to learn how to take a left and a right on the road. That one took me a little bit longer. I started doing it the same day, and I started doing loops around my block, going both. I would leave my driveway going left and right. That way that I could do a loop around my block, taking all left turns, and then again taking all right turns. So I could practice both left and right turns, but I didn't quite. There was something wrong. There was something wrong. I didn't quite understand what was wrong. And the way I compensated for that was just taking the corners slower. So you can take corners slower and really control the bike, how wide you're taking the corner and how narrow you're taking the corner. You can completely control that with just speed, which is part of taking the corner, but it's not the only part of the corner. It's not the only thing you need to worry about. So I did that, and I got more confident, probably more confident than I needed to be yet, because I was like, I'll just slow down on the corners. So then I started going, still in my neighborhood, not going on main roads, but started going 30 miles an hour. I started getting off of my block, staying in my neighborhood but on back roads, but going farther and farther and farther. So that I did that. That took me a day. That took me one day to get to that level of progression. But then I was there for about a week. And after a week, I had an incident where I was going to take a right turn, and I was going too fast, and I had read online that you're not supposed to use your front brakes while taking a corner. By the way, that's wrong. Don't do that, or don't think that you can use your front brakes when you're taking a corner. Just at the time, I had read something that said you shouldn't, and so in my mind, I was afraid to use the front brakes. I was taking this right turn too fast, probably not too fast, honestly. I was just, at the time, I was super intimidated to lean the bike. So I probably could have just leaned more. But anyways, I was taking a right corner. I had been riding for a week. I was taking a right turn faster than I should have for my current lean angle, and I was afraid to use my front brake, and I ended up going wide on this corner and going off the road. As soon as I went off the road and hit the dirt, the bike just fell over. And so that was the first time I dropped a bike. It really wasn't that big of a deal. I think I was going, I don't know how fast I was going. At maximum, I was going 20 miles an hour. At max, I was probably going slower. I was probably going like 10 or 15. It hurt my feels more than it hurt the bike or me. So yeah, and that was a pretty interesting story. No one saw it, and I was super embarrassed. I look around, and no one's there. And so I picked the bike up, and I'm trying to get it back on the road, and it's up a slight hill, and the bike's 500 pounds. I'm a little guy. I couldn't get it up there, and then next thing I know, a privacy fence of the house of the yard I just crashed into, privacy fence opens up, and there's 3 dudes or a lady and 2 dudes just standing there staring at me, trying to get the bike back. Needless to say, I found some muscles, and I got that bike on the road right then and got out of the yard. It's pretty funny. Anyways, so then I was scared because I crashed the bike, and I was scared, and I didn't ride for like another week, partially because I was scared, but also because it was around 4th of July, and there was just holidays and things like that going on, and yeah, it was a convenient excuse to not ride the bike because I was scared. But then I started reading more online about what could have gone wrong, what I could have done better, watching YouTube videos, and what really, really helped me, and this is what kind of fixed I wouldn't say it fixed my cornering problem. I still have plenty to learn. I'm not going to say that it fixed my cornering problem. Even to this day, I feel like I have a lot to learn about bike in general, but even cornering. But the thing that I saw in a video, and I wish I remember what video it was so I could link that video, but I don't, I'm sorry. The thing that I saw was a guy said, look where you're going when you take a corner. So when I would take a corner, at the time, I was pretty much always, even when I was riding forward, I was kind of staring at the ground directly in front of me. Well, you don't do that. When you're riding the bike, you need to look down the road, where you're going. Look on down the road. And this may sound intuitive to some people, but of course it's super intuitive when you're riding straight down the road. But even when you're taking a corner, you need to look around the corner. You look down the exit of the turn. You don't look at the ground in front of you, you look down that way. Because the bike kind of goes where you're looking. So if I'm on a bike like this and I'm riding straight and I want to take a right-hand corner, I'm going to look that direction. And then your body will subconsciously kind of shift the bike into the position to where your head's back looking forward. And you look on down the road and you'll just drive down the road. It's really simple. So that one, actually, probably I should have thought of that ahead of time. I have plenty of experience on bicycles, and that's how you do it on a bicycle also. But that one little tip, that took me from crashing and taking corners wrong to now I'm taking corners. And then from there, my progression just kind of went through the roof. I wasn't scared to ride the bike. I mean, I was always scared to ride the bike. I'm even to this day still, when I get on the bike, there's a little bit of scariness in it. And that's kind of why you want to ride the bike. But that fixed a lot of my confidence issues that I was having right then. From there, my progression just went through the roof. I started riding the bike more and more and more. In 2 weeks, I put 500 miles on this bike, and it was almost all on back roads in my neighborhood, going 30 miles an hour. So then I started feeling like there were some other things I was scared of. I needed to work on other things I'm scared of. I've got cornering down. So then I started trying to take it out on main roads, going up to 40 miles an hour, getting up to 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, riding in traffic, things like that. I remember the first day I rode in traffic, I was scared shitless. But it's really not that bad. Just pay attention. Keep a buffer zone between you and the car in front of you and the car behind you. The car next to you, try to not let them come into your lane. Stay out if you can't see someone's face in their side mirrors, then they probably can't see you. That means you're in their blind zone, so you need to do something about that. And yeah, just ride safe, act like no one sees you, and always be cautious. So I got over my fear of riding in traffic by just doing it and being cautious and paying attention to the things around me. So then I started working on other things, like I was a little afraid of taking roundabouts. So I started working on taking roundabouts. There's 2 roundabouts pretty close to my house, and I would just intentionally go right around those roundabouts. And then the last major thing that I did that I was afraid of was go onto the highway. And I went onto the highway, and with this bike, at this point I'm still riding this bike. I've been riding this bike for about 3 weeks. And I've taken it onto the highway, and that's the last major thing that I was afraid of to do. And at that point, I just started riding to work every single day. I just was like, I've conquered everything. So I started riding it to work. I pretty much retired my truck. I only took my truck out when I needed to haul my kayak or take my dog with me somewhere. And then I was just riding this every single day. And but once I started riding to work, I started really feeling confident and one with the bike, and I understood the bike. The bike wasn't intimidating to me at all anymore. It was more, at the time, still just traffic. So then I started riding to work, and riding into work at 7:30 a.m. and then coming home at 5 p.m. during rush hours, obviously. There's a lot of traffic, and that traffic can get pretty freaking aggressive. So I rode to work for about a week every day, and I was on this bike, and I was just a little intimidated. I was starting to really feel comfortable with this bike. I could ride it pretty hard, what I thought was pretty hard at the time. And the traffic was intimidating me, man. I'd be going down a 40 mile an hour road, and I'd be pushing 60 trying to get it away from the guy that's tailgating me, or that's riding my ass. And he's just keeping up with me, going 60 and a 40, and so is the car in the lane next to me. So I was pretty intimidated by traffic at that point in the morning, and I felt like I started looking at other bikes. Because I don't know, I've never been a huge, I like cruisers, I think they're cool, but I've always known that a cruiser is not really my style of a bike. I like them, I kind of want to get a different one and outfit it for touring, but I don't know, it's not really my style. I wouldn't ride it every single day. So buying this bike, I knew I was going to replace it with something more sporty, and then once I was comfortable with it and wanting to ride every single day, and then getting scared by the traffic that's trying to run me over in the morning because this bike's not quite fast enough to get away from them, I started looking at other bikes. And I started reading a lot of reviews. That's when I found the Yamaha MT-07, and I watched a lot of reviews on this Yamaha MT-07. And pretty much everyone says it's the wheelie king. It's a badass wheelie bike, but it is a beginner bike. And I'm not gonna say it's not a beginner bike, but I think that it's an incredibly aggressive beginner bike. I haven't rode too many other bikes, so I can't compare it to other beginner bikes. But this thing is, compared to this, it's like twice as much horsepower, twice as much torque. I think it's 70-ish horsepower and 50-ish foot-pounds of torque, or 40 or 50-ish foot-pounds of torque, or something like that. And the torque is all in the low revs, so it's like when you're riding it around town, you constantly are in its torquey zone where it wants to be, and it just feels like so much more powerful. Now, I will say that I never felt like this bike was going to get away from me either, like this bike would, but I had already been riding for a few weeks and kind of understood it. And sometimes it still does surprise me whenever I freaking am kind of trying to be an idiot and riding like a hooligan or whatever. I'll be like, it'll kind of jerk me a little bit. So I can see how if you don't have a ton of experience with a clutch like I did before riding bikes, and then also having the experience on this bike for a couple weeks, if you just have no experience at all with being on a bike or a clutch, and you go with this, say you're a little bit young, like 19 years old, you know, you're probably going to get yourself into some trouble. I feel like there's someone out there that's going to get themselves into some trouble. Now that being said, I always felt safe. I never felt like this bike was too much for me. I will say that this bike is incredibly fun. It's exactly the amount of power I think I need at this point, and it's just a lot of fun. But yeah, that's kind of how I went from that. I bought this bike as my first bike. I rode it for less than a month before I sold it to my roommate and bought a Yamaha MT-07 and upgraded to something a lot more sporty. From there, I got a lot more confident on the highway. I took this on the highway. I got it up to 70, but it was too much for the. It's not too much for the bike. The bike can do that, but it's definitely it's working its legs. It's really trying to get going at 70. I read online that the max speed for this bike is 80 miles an hour, and I'm pretty sure I got it up to like 78, maybe even 80. But yeah, it's really pushing it. So I didn't take it on the highway a whole lot when the time that I was riding it. This thing, I immediately took it to the highway. I rode it on the highway home. I bought this with 0 miles. I bought this I bought this with 0 miles on July 20th. Today is August 26th, and it has 2,000 miles on it. That's how much I've been riding. I've been riding hella. And that's after I already put 500 miles on this bike. So in my first 2-ish months of riding motorcycles, I put over 2,500 miles on the bike. So yeah, once I got this bike, it was really close to my birthday. I started getting a lot more comfortable on the highway, and I just pushed it. I went up to 100 miles an hour. I've done 100 miles an hour 2 or 3 times on this bike now. It'll go faster. I think online the max speed says it's 150. I haven't really gone over 100. I went like 101. I don't feel a need that I need to go to 150 miles an hour. 100 is fast enough for me. But then the last thing I did, the last major goal that I was afraid to do and kind of wanted to do in my learning experience was a road trip. So this last weekend I did a road trip. If you've watched this channel for a long time, you'll know I live in Springfield, Missouri, which is southwest Missouri. And there's a really famous motorcycle road, or just scenic view, but it's really popular for motorcyclists in northwest Arkansas, called the Pig Trail. So it's about 2.5-ish hours away, but I took scenic routes all the way there. So it took me I left at 7 a.m. and I didn't actually get to the Pig Trail until about 7 p.m., partially because I got a little lost. But yeah, it took me quite some time to get there. And then I camped, rode the Pig Trail a couple more times while I was camping, and then came home. The whole trip was about 500 miles, and I feel like I've completed my my beginner motorcyclist journey. I'm definitely still a beginner. I don't even have my license. I'm going to take the MFS course. I think it's in 2 weeks from now, actually. I need to look online. I think there was even a written test that I need to pass before I can go do that. But yeah. I will say, on that trip, I did drop this bike as well on the road trip. So I have now dropped both bikes. It's not that big of a deal. It didn't really hurt either bike. This bike, it's not actually this one. It's on the other side, but the blinker is held on by some like rubbery things, so that if you drop it, the rubber will just kind of give, and then it won't break the blinker. At the time, I couldn't figure out. I didn't even notice for probably half the rest of the day that the blinker was just flopping around. And then by the time I noticed, I didn't want to mess with it until I got home in case I broke it more. But all I had to do was just kind of pop it back out. It was super easy. So yeah, don't be afraid to drop your bikes. Obviously try not to, but it's not going to be the end of the world if you drop your bike. I didn't even put a single mark on this one when I dropped it. I dropped it in grass though, so that was okay. Anyways, I'm just rambling now. Thanks for watching. I'm going to do reviews on both of these bikes, like more in-depth reviews on both of these bikes. So if you want to see those, I'm also editing. I have a ton of video from the road trip that I took. I'm going to upload a video of that. I took a ferry. I did the scenic route, the Pig Trail scenic route, and then there was just some other things that were cool that I recorded. I saw a VW parade in Eureka Springs. So yeah, anyways, keep an eye out for all those videos. Review on this, the road trip, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching.